Welcome back to Spilling Tea. Today's episode is a whopper, not the flame grilled kind either, the emotional damage kind. It's a little personal, a little reflective, and maybe even uncomfortable. So think less like have it your way and more like let's unpack that. Because today we're talking about how lust, distraction, and misplaced attention can slowly damage real love and real connection, which sounds intense because it is, but also it's incredibly common, like disturbingly common. Like it's the kind of thing that happens so often that we don't even clock it anymore. We don't call it out, not even in most churches. We don't even realize that we're participating in it half the time. And that's because it rarely happens through one dramatic moment, which is the interesting thing. Very few people wake up and think, man, today seems like a great day to blow something up good for me. It's usually a lot quieter than that. It's a habit, a pattern, a series of small decisions that don't seem important at the time. Maybe it's becoming a little too interested in somebody else's attention. Maybe it's constantly wondering if something better is out there. Maybe it's being physically present, but mentally somewhere else. And before you realize it, something real starts to feel replaceable. We live in a world where attention is constantly being pulled in 100 different directions. Validation is instant. Options seem endless. And commitment often feels optional. Yet Jesus addressed this long before social media ever existed. In Matthew 6:21, he said, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So in other words, whatever consistently gets your attention eventually gets a piece of your heart, whether it's good or whether it's bad. So today we're unpacking the difference between lust and real connection, how distraction shows up in relationships, the subtle ways that we sabotage something good for us, and why many of us don't even realize that we're even doing it. So grab your coffee, your tea, and maybe a little accountability, because this episode might step on your toes, mine included. Let's set the stage with love, lust, and distraction, because here's the thing. Real love is actually pretty simple. Not easy. If it were easy, people with the moral compass of a shopping cart and the impulse control of a Labrador wouldn't keep blowing up perfectly good relationships. Yet here we are. Love is simple. Yet somehow, as a species, we've never met a simple thing that we couldn't overthink, overanalyze, and turn into an unnecessary crisis. Hello, I might be the president of that club. Love is not built on confusion. It's not built on guessing. It's not built on constant highs and lows just to feel something. It's built on consistency, attention, effort. It's showing up even when nothing exciting is happening. It's choosing the same person over and over again without constantly needing something new to keep your interest. That's what makes love powerful. Kind of reminds me of 1 Corinthians 13, the most quoted scripture at weddings. Love is patient, love is kind. It keeps showing up. Notice it doesn't say love gets bored every 6 minutes and starts scrolling. But lust is different. Lust is loud, fast, immediate. It's intense and exciting. It shows up with urgency and convinces you that it's meaningful and harmless, which is a complete lie. It feels like chemistry. It feels like urgency. curiosity, maybe even a rush. It's everything right now. It doesn't ask questions, which might sound appealing to some people. It doesn't wait. It doesn't build. It just consumes you. And because it feels so strong, we confuse it for something deeper. And that's the trap. Love and lust aren't the same thing, even though we often treat them like they're interchangeable. And that's where people get confused, because we're wired to chase the feeling, not necessarily the substance. Proverbs talks about this repeatedly. The Bible warns us over and over about being led by what feels good in the moment rather than what is actually good for us. Because not every desire deserves a steering wheel. One is focused on consumption, the other is focused on commitment. One asks, what can I get? The other asks, what can I give? One seeks satisfaction, the other seeks sacrifice. And let's be honest, one of those is significantly less exciting than a dopamine hit. Nobody writes blockbuster movies about two people faithfully honoring their commitments for 40 years. Hollywood prefers explosions, love triangles, and at least one completely avoidable bad decision. Real life, however, it's mostly laundry, dishes, grocery lists, and deciding where you're going to eat for the 5th time this week. Yet somehow, that's where real love proves itself. And in a culture that constantly rewards novelty, commitment can sometimes feel boring by comparison because we celebrate the spark. We post the butterflies. We obsess over the chase. But relationships aren't built in the moments that make your heart race. They're built in ordinary Tuesdays, in conversations that nobody else sees, in keeping your word when it would be easier not to, in the small decisions that never make it to social media but quietly build trust over time. That's the part that people often miss. Love isn't proven by intensity, it's proven by endurance. And sometimes we trade something lasting and real for something that simply feels stronger in that specific moment, which is a little like selling your house for a fireworks show. Sure, it's exciting, but one of those is gone in 30 seconds. Next, we're going to hit unrealistic expectations, because distraction doesn't just show up in conversations or social media. Sometimes it shows up in the things that we consume, the movies, the magazines, those images, the curated lifestyles, the fantasy versions of people we choose to compare reality against. It's crazy. The problem is that fantasy always has an advantage. It's edited, it's filtered, it's curated, carefully presented. Real people don't get that luxury. I wish we did, but we don't. But when we're constantly consuming unrealistic versions of life, relationships, or beauty, our expectations can quietly change. And suddenly we're comparing a real human being to something that was never real to begin with. Think about how unfair that actually is. That's an impossible standard. No healthy relationship can compete with something manufactured for entertainment. When that happens, real connection can start feeling less exciting, not because it's lacking, but because expectations have become distorted. I've actually experienced this personally. There was a season in a past relationship when I felt as though I was being measured against a fantasy. Comments were different. Expectations changed. Something felt off. I couldn't always explain it, but I could sense that what we had was being viewed through a different lens. And over time, that created distance. Looking back, I believe those influences played a role in the disconnect that eventually led to a divorce. Because distraction starts small, a little extra attention here, a little comparison there. a little less appreciation for what's already in front of you. And by the time you notice it, your perspective has already started to shift. Unfortunately, we are living in the most distracted dating culture in human history. That is not an exaggeration, my friends. That is a fact. For the first time, we carry endless alternatives in our pockets and purses every waking hour of every single day. There's always another message. There's always another notification, another profile to look at, another conversation, another person who seems interesting for about 10 seconds, another reminder that someone, somewhere, might be more attractive, more exciting, younger, more successful, more compatible. Whether we act on those opportunities or not is almost beside the point, because distractions don't have to become actions to have an effect. They only need to steal our attention, which is exactly what they do. And attention is the foundation of connection. You can't fully invest in the relationship that's right in front of you if part of your mind is constantly scanning for what might be waiting around the corner. You can't build intimacy while permanently keeping one foot out the door. You can't make someone feel deeply seen when your focus is divided among dozens of other things competing for your energy. Real connection requires presence, not proximity, not occasional communication. Presence. The ability to be mentally, emotionally, and relationally available to the person that you're with. And presence is becoming increasingly rare. Many people are physically together, but psychologically elsewhere, sitting across from each other at the dinner table while checking their phones, watching a movie while having side conversations with people online, having difficult conversations while simultaneously scrolling through social media, listening just enough to respond, but not enough to truly or fully understand. The result is that many relationships aren't ending because of dramatic betrayals or lack of love. They're slowly eroding from accumulated distraction. One unnoticed moment at a time. One divided conversation at a time. One, I'll pay attention to that later at a time. And here's the part that should make all of us a little uncomfortable. This isn't simply a willpower or a self-control problem. It's also a biology problem. Researchers have found that the human brain is naturally attracted to novelty. So new experiences, unexpected information, unfamiliar people, fresh possibilities. When the brain encounters something new, it activates neural systems associated with learning, motivation, reward, and attention. Novelty grabs us because from an evolutionary perspective, paying attention to new information often helped humans survive and adapt. So in other words, our brains were designed to notice what is new. The problem is that modern technology has learned how to exploit that tendency. Every swipe offers the possibility of someone different. Every notification presents the chance of something unexpected. Every scroll introduces another piece of information that your brain hasn't seen before. And the brain loves novelty. And the apps, they know it. Many of us spend hours every single day caught in that cycle. So naturally, our attention is pulled toward new people, new conversations, new opportunities, new possibilities. The issue is that meaningful relationships they're built on almost the opposite qualities. They're built on trust, consistency, reliability, familiarity, shared history, inside jokes, ordinary moments. showing up for the same person over and over again, even when nothing exciting is happening. Healthy relationships aren't usually fueled by constant novelty. They're strengthened by repeated investment, the same person, the same commitment, the same choice, day after day, year after year. And that creates a tension that many people don't recognize. The brain often craves what is new, but the heart grows through what is consistent. One offers excitement, the other offers depth. One creates stimulation, the other creates security. One is immediate, the other compounds over time. Neither is inherently bad. The problem begins when we confuse one for the other, because stimulation can feel remarkably similar to fulfillment in the moment. Both create strong emotions, both capture attention, both make us feel something, but only one continues to provide value long after the initial excitement fades. A new match, a new flirtation, or a new conversation can create a rush. A lasting relationship creates a foundation, and foundations are rarely as thrilling as fireworks, but they are far more valuable when life becomes difficult. What many people are experiencing today isn't necessarily a lack of love. It's a lack of sustained attention. Relationships often don't break because somebody stopped caring. They break because caring was gradually replaced by distraction. Attention drifted. Focus shifted. Presence disappeared. The person was still there. The relationship was still there, but the investment became fragmented. And relationships can survive many challenges. They can survive distance. They can survive stress, conflict, even uncertainty. But they struggle when they are consistently deprived of attention. Because attention is how love is expressed in everyday life. It's how people feel valued. It's how trust grows. It's how intimacy develops. When we repeatedly give our attention to everything except the people that we care about the most, those relationships inevitably begin to weaken. Not because love vanished, not because attraction disappeared, but because presence did. And in a world overflowing with distractions, presence may be one of the most valuable gifts that we can give another human being. Now let's talk about how we sabotage connection, because connection is rarely lost all at once. More often it's weakened by the ways we avoid fully committing to it. Sometimes it isn't someone else damaging the relationship, it's us. We say we want something real, we say we want something deep, something lasting, but when the moment comes to fully invest, we hesitate. We keep one foot out the door, not because we're unhappy, not because we were planning on leaving anyway, but because keeping options feels safer than closing them. We like knowing there's a backup plan, a fallback option, a safety net. Someone who would still answer if we reached out to them. Someone who reminds us we're still wanted. And if we're being honest, that's often where validation enters the picture. Because being chosen feels so good. Being desired feels really good. And being noticed feels really good. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem begins when we start collecting validation instead of building commitment. Sometimes that looks like maintaining conversations we know aren't going anywhere, holding on to connections we've already outgrown, keeping former romantic interests within reach, leaving doors cracked open that should have been closed a long time ago. Not because we're pursuing a future with those people, but because letting go feels uncomfortable. Because closed doors require trust, and trust requires vulnerability. And the irony is that many of us want the depth that commitment creates while avoiding the risk that commitment requires. We want security, but we keep escape routes. We want intimacy, but we protect parts of ourselves from being fully known. We want certainty, but we continue entertaining possibilities that keep us from fully choosing what's already right in front of us. The problem is that keeping every door open makes it difficult to fully walk through the one that you've chosen. Real connection requires commitment, and commitment means accepting that some opportunities must be released in order for something meaningful to grow. Because you can't fully invest in a relationship while constantly preparing for an alternative. At some point, love requires a decision, not just to choose someone, but to stop shopping for other options. So here's the truth. The problem isn't always what catches your eye, it's what captures your attention. Because attention eventually shapes your priorities, and priorities eventually shape your relationships. Real love isn't built in dramatic moments, like I said earlier. It's built in ordinary ones, the conversations, the check-ins, the shared routines, the small acts of showing up. Those quiet moments are where trust grows. It's where intimacy deepens. It's where love becomes something that lasts. So if you have something real in your life right now, please pay attention to it. Literally. Give it your focus. Give it your time, because in a world designed to compete for your attention, focused presence may be one of the most valuable gifts that you can give to another person. So if this episode made you think, pause, or reflect a little, that's the whole point. Mission accomplished. Please share it with somebody who loves deep conversations like I do. And if you ever need to talk or share, you know the drill. Email me at ce.spillingtea@gmail.com. And I will leave you with this. In Galatians 6, it says, a person reaps what they sow. And relationships work the same way. If you sow attention, you're far more likely to reap connection. If you sow distraction, don't be surprised when distance shows up. Harsh, maybe, but it's also true. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm your host, Colleen. We will talk next time. Have a great night, my friends.